No, 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 no. Wait.
I never thought I would play a game that would make me afraid to move, but every inch of Meet Your Maker is quite literally a death trap. And the cool part is, it's all set up by players. This game is basically a massive FPS and tower defense hybrid where players create death trap mazes that other players are forced to navigate. The goal is simple: grab the gen mat and escape with your life. But your life ends with a single hit, sending you right back to the start of the maze. It's like if Mario Maker and Groundhog Day had a baby, and honestly, it's an awesome concept that I never would have come up with in a million years. And the developers were kind enough to sponsor this video and my first look at the game. And not to spoil it, but I had a great time. Check the link in the video description to grab a copy of this game on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. Now, Meet Your Maker is set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where a plague has corrupted humanity's DNA, killing billions and leaving the survivors to savagely hunt for the cure. You play a clone conscripted by a chimera, these weird floaty head guy things, to explore the wasteland and collect viable genetic material used to evolve the chimera into a being capable of surviving the wasteland and repopulating the world. A fairly unique premise, if I do say so. The wasteland is presented as a series of custom-made levels designed by other players to brutally murder you as efficiently as possible. Resources are scarce, so while the maze structures can be intricate and massive, the amount of traps and enemies you're allowed to place is finite. As a builder, your goal is to use the rudimentary geometry of the maze to cleverly hide traps and enemies. These traps can take the form of crushers, spike launchers, fire pits, and other machines of death. The more you can take players by surprise, the better, as in, you'll kill them. One hit and they're dead. However, one shot from them is enough to destroy your traps, and they have a key advantage that no trap can mitigate: the ability to respawn and try again. Now, the building side of this game isn't just a gimmick or a side aspect of Meet Your Maker. Once you build a maze, it basically becomes a resource generator. As players are thrown into it via matchmaking, you can periodically revisit and check your creations to pick up the resources that players drop when they die. You can also watch replays of the attempts made by players to further refine your designs. If you're more into the building aspect of the game than the raiding aspect, there's a ton of depth here to play with. You can use the resources that your maze generates from killing players to actually level it up and unlock more components and then edit them in. I could easily see building a level and going back to tinker with it for weeks and weeks. They're not just these static or disposable things that you create on a whim. They're a living part of your experience as a player, and they're always worth revisiting and refining. Now, while you're navigating other people's mazes, you have a very finite amount of resources and abilities at your disposal. Your starting primary weapons are basically a fancy crossbow with 2 bolts and a short-range sword. Every shot you fire has to be manually recovered, and they have a limited range. So not only are you trying to navigate a house of horrors designed explicitly to end your life as brutally as possible, the tools you're given are basically the bare minimum to defend yourself with. The good news is, everything that you break or kill has a chance to drop resources that you can use to make life a little bit easier, but I'll get to that part in a bit. Now, at the end of each maze is a vial of genetic material called the Gen Mat. Reaching it obviously requires successfully navigating the entire maze, but one thing working in your favor is that you instantly respawn when you die and the maze remains static, so you can memorize each maze through trial and error if you have to. Obviously, the less you die, the better, but on a long enough timeline and with enough mental gymnastics, anything should be possible. Assuming you manage to avoid or destroy all the traps and enemies, grabbing the Gen Mat unlocks the ability to extract. It also spawns an entirely new set of traps and enemies that you'll have to work your way back through to reach the exit. And if I haven't made this clear by now, Meet Your Maker is really trying to live up to its name.
Everyone just shut your eyes and pretend that didn't happen.
Depending on how the maze is designed, extracting can be done from either the starting point or making it to the open desert. The starting point is also considered a safe zone where you can change your loadout before diving into the maze. Successfully extracting adds resources that you collected to your base, which has 5 clones called advisors to assist you in building and surviving the mazes. You can spend the various resources you collect with these advisors to unlock new gear or activate temporary boosts. Some of the boosts do stuff like revealing the approximate number of traps and enemies in a maze. Others do things like increase the drop rates of resources. The advisors also provide backstory about what exactly happened to the world and how your mission impacts it via spoken dialogue. Now, the upgrades that advisors offer you give you a real sense of progress as you unlock them. Since the starting gear is so basic and weak, any little improvement feels like a massive leap forward, especially considering how challenging raiding the mazes can feel. Even though you have the benefit of hindsight, having better tools at your disposal makes that hindsight feel less and less necessary. Ideally, you'd want to rely on your skills to navigate a maze the first time without dying versus having to repeat it after being humiliated by a well-placed trap. Having better tools won't make it necessarily easy for you, but it'll certainly improve your odds. Now, most of my time with Meet Your Maker was spent raiding other players' creations. As robust and fun as building the mazes is, I definitely like solving a good puzzle rather than being the one who makes it. But both aspects of the game are very fleshed out, so regardless of your preference, there's enough depth to satisfy both approaches. Plus, the developers regularly add new content and free updates and paid DLC too. Their goal is to provide long-term support for the game with new items for both raiders and builders to utilize. Everything is available in multiplayer and co-op as well. You and another player or friend can build and raid mazes together, which adds a whole new dynamic of creative teamwork and problem solving. This game is fantastic for people who like building or solving puzzles, especially ones that involve, well, spike traps and guns. The gameplay is tight and well refined too, which can be less common with these indie titles, but not here. The only rough edges I've encountered so far are the zany ways players have constructed their levels, which honestly adds to the charm and variety of the game rather than distracting you. And you can always select a lower difficulty tier of maps to raid if you need a bit of a breather. Now, aside from the super original concept of this game, the other thing that really stood out to me was the storytelling and world building. It's certainly one thing to have well-crafted gameplay and interesting mechanics. It's another to envelop that in a world and narrative brimming with mysteries and intriguing concepts. Everything about the game's presentation, from the visuals and character design to cutscenes and lore, seemed like it was handcrafted from a deep and well fleshed out world concept. The character designs and voice acting are top notch. The Chimera is a gruesome glimpse at the horrors wrought on humanity by the plague. The clones are a nightmarish hodgepodge of mechanical and organic parts that look like something out of Sid's Twisted Toy Bin from Toy Story. And despite their seemingly simplistic, well, literal building blocks, the mazes are constructed with their design and texturing fitting into the aesthetic of the world. It's all cohesive, original, and most importantly, extremely fun to play. Every new maze is a challenge for both the creator and raider, and I can't imagine that getting dull anytime soon, especially with a game that's driven by new player content. I highly recommend taking a look at Meet Your Maker, and again, my link for the game is in the video description. If you've been playing it, let me know your thoughts in the comments of this video. I'd be curious, and as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.